Protagonist of this story, Ban Yu-wan. He's inside the goblin's den, and let me tell you, he's so overpowered that he's literally cutting down countless goblins without even moving from his spot. The other goblins in the area are starting to cower as they witness this guy brutally cutting down everything in sight without even caring who's in his way. One of the terrified goblins tries to hit him with a pesky little arrow, but it's quickly smashed by his club, which is literally moving on its own. Now, the goblins are even more afraid and recoiling in apprehension, but sadly for these poor critters, they're not getting away unscathed. Ban Yu-wan then transforms his club into a literal enchanted gun, ready to incinerate every goblin in sight. Okay, having all this power is cool and all, but let's take a moment to dive into Ban Yu-wan's origin story and see how he got to this point. Ever since he was 4 years old, practically a toddler, Ban Yu-wan was exceptional at recognizing languages. He was so good at it that his parents started freaking out over how he could understand so many different languages. His proud grandpa always boasted about his grandson, claiming that a child had been born who would fulfill their family's long-cherished wish by reclaiming the power of Babel for their family. Of course, Ban Yu-wan's parents never believed in such tall tales, which always made the old man furious. You see, according to their family lore, long ago, in a chaotic world, the great ancestors of the Ban family possessed the ability to allow everyone to communicate. With that power, they united people of all species and built a tower that would never collapse. That tower was called the Tower of Babel. Ban Yu-wan's interest was piqued as soon as he heard about that tower. Not because he was fascinated by his ancestors' history, but because he was a greedy little brat who wanted to profit from it. So, he begged his grandpa to reveal where the tower was located. Sadly for him, his grandpa didn't know the exact location. However, the old man filled his little grandson with hope, saying that once they found that tower, their family would regain all their power and glory. At this point, Ban Yu-wan always hoped that his extraordinarily linguistic talent could help him regain his family's prestige, just as he'd heard in the stories. Surprisingly, his abilities far exceeded those expectations. As time passed, he grew into a young lad, and one day he was sitting anxiously, waiting to see if he had been accepted into the university. While he was refreshing the window screen for the results, a weird digital window popped up in front of him. What was even stranger about this window was that everything written in it was in some kind of foreign language. He tried to read it, and the system window revealed that it was a congratulatory note from the best academy in an alternate dimension for passing the document screening. Of course, Ban Yu-wan was completely boggled because he had no clue how he could read this, or what all this nonsense even meant. As he read further, the system revealed that he had been summoned to the practical evaluation venue, and if he passed, he would become a prospective student. The note stated he would be transported there in 10 seconds. The countdown began, and our clueless idiot had no idea what the hell was going on. Right at that moment, he also received the acceptance letter from the university, confirming that he had passed. Of course, he already knew he would succeed, but he still felt nervous about the countdown ticking down. Once it ended, a blue light enveloped him, and he vanished before his mother could see him. She was left wondering where he had gone. Suddenly, he found himself falling into a dark tunnel, and another system popped up, announcing that a special practical evaluation for candidates from lower dimensions had begun. Ban Yu-wan was utterly confused, wondering if he had entered some sort of game. Meanwhile, the system instructed him to defeat a blind goblin and destroy the dungeon core. All he could do was scream in frustration for getting dragged into a mess he never signed up for. He wanted to know what in the hell this practical evaluation and all this special exam nonsense even meant. Right at that moment, he hears the threatening sounds of footsteps, and Ban Yu-wan literally starts sweating bullets when he sees these disgusting, ugly creatures with clubs in hand. It seems these creatures can't actually see him, but they can hear him clearly. The two goblins are talking in their own language, but surprisingly, our boy can understand them perfectly. He's not thrilled to hear them referring to him as prey. He starts piecing things together about what the system notification said regarding the practical evaluation, blind goblins, and the dungeon core. He thinks to himself that he really has to defeat these creatures to get out of here because this whole setup feels like something straight out of a game or a novel. The goblins are trying to detect him, while Ban Yu-wan is literally crying over his rotten luck, wondering how he's supposed to defeat these creatures when he hasn't even killed a rat in his life, let alone something dangerous. One of the goblins finally swings its club, and it lands just a few centimeters away from his crotch, almost hitting him right between the legs. He's literally only a centimeter away from getting castrated. The goblin swings its club again, but this time Ban Yu-wan dodges out of the way, and he tries to remain calm to not draw their attention. However, it looks like his presence has already been exposed to these relentless goblins, and they attempt to smash him once more. Ban jumps away just in time, narrowly saving himself. The two goblins then converse about the exact location of the sound. This makes our boy realize that even though these creatures are blind, they are sensitive to sounds and movements as well. It seems they hunt by cornering their prey while talking to each other. He's sure that no matter how well he hides, he's eventually going to get caught. Ban Yuan finally comes up with a clever idea and throws a pebble in another direction. The monsters quickly charge toward the source of the sound without a shred of hesitation, but all they find are 2 pebbles. That's when Ban takes advantage of the distraction and hits one of the goblins down with a giant rock. Confused, the 2 goblins begin to attack each other, thinking they're fighting their enemy. They beat the living daylights out of one another, fighting until the very end, and eventually, they both go down for the count after smashing each other's heads. Ban nearly shits his pants at the sight of this brutal mess. As he huffs profusely, he notices the club the creatures were using lying nearby. He grabs the club, apologizes to the 2 green bastards for what he's about to do, and finally brings it down on their heads to make sure they're really out for the count. Just as the goblins lie dead, a bright light shimmers around them, and a system notification pops up, congratulating Ban on his first successful hunt in the dungeon. As a reward, he is granted the power of the higher dimensions. A strange enchantment begins to swirl around his hand, and his system shows that the power of the Babylonian code has been unlocked. The system reveals that this power will be displayed using ideograms, a language familiar to the holder. If you don't know about ideograms, these are characters that convey meaning through their form, representing concepts or things. The system notification tells him that Chinese characters have registered. Unlike phonetic characters that represent sounds, these characters convey meaning directly through their shapes. From the 2 goblins, the common concepts of demon and life were extracted from their flesh, along with other concepts too complex or insignificant for the holder's current level to absorb. This shocks Ban Yuan even more because, as far as he can understand, his ability is not just about language, he can literally extract concepts from things. The system then indicates that he is about to absorb 0.2 demons, and demons are inherently a concept that humans cannot possess. It is recommended to store or separate this in the Babylonian code and apply it to other objects. He then decides to try absorbing another concept, and grabs the hovering symbol from the air and places it on his chest. The system promptly reveals that he has absorbed 0.4 life, increasing his life to 10.4 and enhancing his abilities and potential. He then absorbs 0.2 flesh as well, which raises his fleshiness to 10.2 and makes his body healthier. He then twiddles his fingers and notices that not only is he feeling better overall, but his grip strength, leg strength, and everything else has significantly improved. Basically, he had absorbed these 2 goblins' abilities, and once their powers were transferred to him, their bodies disappeared. All that was left were 2 clubs. If applying concepts works on him, Ban Yuan figures it should work on objects too. So he grabs one of the concepts and applies it to one of the clubs. That's how all the blind goblins you see are dead. He then finally destroys a strange orb-like object, known as the dungeon core, and the system window promptly congratulates him for passing the practical test of the lower dimension special examination. Ban Yuan lets out a huge sigh of relief, wondering if this means he can finally go home. But to his dismay, the system informs him that he will be transferred to the dormitory. The place he was sent to wasn't home. It was a world he had never seen before, a place called Union Academy. As he lands on the ground, another system window congratulates him on passing the practical exam and becoming a provisional student. The system then informs him to wear the assigned uniform properly and attend the interview, making sure to wear the Union Academy uniform with pride. Of course, Ban Yuan is cursing his rotten luck once again. He had finally been accepted into one of the universities back home, but now he's stuck wearing a school uniform all over again. Not that he has any options. Begrudgingly, he quickly puts on the uniform and strides out, ready to give these people a piece of his mind. At the very least, he's thinking of demanding compensation for the transportation mess they put him through. But all of his frustration vanishes when he spots an absolute beauty in glasses sitting at the reception counter. Ban Yuan hesitates to approach her, wondering if she might be an alien with green skin like the goblins he just fought. But, alien or not, she's undeniably stunning. Once the lady notices him, she greets Ban Yuan as if she had been expecting him. She introduces herself as the professor of magic combat at Union Academy and expresses her delight to see him there. First, she congratulates him on passing the practical exam, and then asks if he knows how extraordinary his test results were, because he has caught the full attention of the entire faculty. Of course, Ban Yuan has absolutely no clue what she's talking about. Meanwhile, the professor continues, explaining that he's the first student in 500 years to create a new artifact during the evaluation. But our boy isn't exactly vibing with all of this praise. After all, he was dragged here without knowing anything and almost died in the process. The professor, however, is all smiles, thrilled beyond measure. She explains that his case is exceptional, even beyond what was expected from the special examination. Meanwhile, Ban Yuan is mentally tuned out, wondering when he'll finally get a chance to leave this academy. But then his eyes land on something strange outside, which is a massive pillar. He curiously asks the professor about the name of that pillar. She explains that the pillar is the very reason Union Academy was established. The academy exists to raise students with the greatest talents across all dimensions and help them reach the top of the tower. This, she says, is the ultimate aspiration of Union Academy and the final hope shared by all dimensions, to conquer the Dungeon of Dungeons, the origin of all mysteries and dangers in this world, known as the Tower of Babel. This revelation hits Ban Yuan like a truck. The Tower of Babel, everything his grandpa used to talk about, the stories he'd heard growing up, it's all here, right in front of him. Even though Ban Yuan is thrilled by the revelation, there's one thing he still doesn't fully understand. They called it the Dungeon of Dungeons, so does that mean strange monsters have taken over the tower? But whatever the case, a smile spreads across his face, because he realizes the glory of his family, and everything from his ancestors will be revived once again. At that moment, he makes his decision to enroll in Union Academy. Thanks to the professor's special treatment, he's sent back home temporarily. After gathering his whole family and explaining everything that just happened, he prepares for his enrollment with renewed determination. Fast forward to his return, inside the lower dungeon of Union Academy in the Hobgoblin Cave, we meet Ban Yuan again. This time, he's completely obliterating the poor goblins out of existence, wielding his powerful enchanted gun with ease, the results of his training and newfound powers. The legend of his family begins anew, and Ban Yuan is just getting started. Now that we know how Ban Yuan reached this point, it's time to dive deeper into his abilities. You see, at first, he thought his power was limited to language, but after encountering various goblins, he began to seize concepts like demon, life, flesh, murder, and even shooting. This all changed dramatically with the Babylonian Code, an ability that lets him absorb, verbalize, and manipulate the very concepts of all objects around him. Whenever he defeats an enemy, Ban Yuan can acquire concepts that he can recognize. The more concepts he acquires, the stronger he becomes. For example, in his first dungeon, the Blind Goblin Cave, he seized several concepts from the goblins and imbued one, demon, into a club, strengthening it into a weapon. That club is now infused with ghastly energy and has become the first artifact created by Ban Yuan. At his command, the club reveals its true form, transforming and acting autonomously as a weapon. He hugs his new buddy so hard that it makes him blush, all thanks to this little guy, who helped our boy score some great evaluation results. Next, he decides to sort through all the concepts he has got. That's when he notices something among the concepts he snagged from the monsters, a brand new concept called soul. At that moment, his little club starts begging him to share this concept. My guy happily agrees, not just with the soul concept, but he also throws in some life ghosts and spirits. He quickly summons the concepts and embeds them into the club. The combined concepts create perfect harmony, causing a transformation in the artifact. The ghost and beast concepts automatically merge, resulting in an amazing synergy that goes way beyond their current potential. Thanks to the transcendental fusion, Ghost Beast 10 has been completed, and a snake known as the Ghost Beast appears before him. Honestly, I have no idea how his powers are working exactly, but I'll just pretend I do. As fierce as this beast looks, it turns out to be just a little snake that emerged from combining the ghost and beast characters, giving life to this new creature known as the Ghost Beast. Ban reaches out to touch it, but when he sees the snake's reptilian face, he hesitates. The snake seems to sense this and starts to look a bit sad. Eventually, Ban musters the courage to rub the snake's head, and the little fella quickly wraps itself around our boy's hand, and Ban even gives him a name, Eve. Before heading back, they decide to check out the growth stats. From what he's experienced so far, life seems to be a concept similar to a level in a game, while flesh represents physical stats. He's still puzzled about why the soul stat is so high. He starts to wonder if abilities like all-seeing eyes and all-hearing ears are somehow related to his language skills. In any case, he decides it's time to return. Once he hits the yes button, he begins to teleport to the Union Academy entrance ceremony. Once we arrive at the Union Academy auditorium for the entrance ceremonies, the whole place is buzzing with new students. In the middle of all the excitement, our boy pops in, catching everyone's attention with his unexpected entrance. He's a bit startled by the sheer number of people around him, but he quickly activates his all-seeing eyes. These special eyes let him read everything depending on his proficiency, allowing him to understand the aura and spirit of his surroundings more deeply. Just as he thought, unlike him, who entered through a special admission from a lower dimension, the regular students who came through the normal process look really strong, even at first glance. As he scans the crowd to find his seat, a giant, ugly bastard suddenly appears in front of him and asks if he's from the lower dimension. He warns our boy not to wander around and to stay out of his sight. My guy just waves them off and starts walking his own path to avoid any commotion. It's clear that those who came in through the regular process have high opinions of themselves and look down on him because he's from a lower dimension. Even here, the ones with power and strength are looking down on those beneath them, which isn't so different from his home planet Earth. He wonders if this attitude is the same everywhere in the world where these people live. Suddenly, someone calls out his name and tells him to come here to sit. As he approaches, he notices only 4 seats, with 3 people already occupying them. He wonders if this is where the special admission students from lower dimensions are supposed to sit. This whole setup is practically screaming racism to him. When he uses his eyesight skills to assess these people's abilities, what he sees completely boggles his mind. Not only are these guys powerful, but they've got enough strength to wipe the floor with the regular students. The blonde guy sitting in the first seat turns out that he already knows our boy. He's the handsome roommate Ban met at the dorm before the entrance ceremony, though their first meeting was a bit unusual. When Ban first entered the dorm room, this blonde dude actually pulled a sword on him. But before things got messy, Ban quickly reminded him that they're both freshmen, which means they're roommates. Blondie apologizes for his earlier behavior, admitting he'd just finished a practical evaluation, so his nerves were a bit on edge. He asks if Ban's okay, but judging by Ban's sweaty face, it's clear he's not feeling great at all. He is, however, more captivated by how this blonde dude literally looks like a prince from a fairy tale, though he's got quite the temper. Still, considering Blondie apologized first, maybe he's not such a bad guy after all. They sit together and chat about their experiences. When Ban shares his story about fighting blind goblins, Blondie can't help but make fun of him, saying even a new recruit with basic training could take down a goblin easily. Naturally, this annoys Ban, who mutters to himself about how this guy is 100% oblivious. Speaking of fights, Ban suddenly remembers he needs to wash his uniform. Without thinking much of it, he starts pulling off his shirt, and the moment his six-pack abs come into view, Blondie goes completely bonkers with embarrassment at the sight of such a chiseled, manly body. When Ban looks at him, Blondie quickly turns his head away to avoid any awkward eye contact, which creeps Ban out a little. In the present, the moment is still filled with tension, but then Ban waves hello to the other 2 ladies sitting in the adjacent seats. One of them has pink hair and looks absolutely phenomenal, with her toned assets and long hair that perfectly complements her cat-like eyes. Then there's the white-haired girl, and the first impression she gives is anything but pleasant. Ban actually recoils a bit in fear because her deep black eyes are so intimidating that he has to turn his head away. As he does, the creepy white-head lady stares at the white snake wrapped around his hand and asks him what it is. Ban introduces his little friend as Eve, and all 3 of them instantly warm up to the adorable creature. Blondie then curiously points out that this snake used to look like a club, so he's curious how it transformed so drastically in just a few days. The white-haired girl, who seemed intimidating at first, actually turns out to be pretty chill. She introduces herself as Dak Goyun, the daughter of a martial artist. She then asks Ban for his name, and he promptly introduces himself, following up with a curious question about whether she can shoot energy blasts using her martial arts. Of course, the other 3 snicker at his ridiculous remark, but Dak Goyun notes that his understanding isn't entirely wrong, which gets Ban even more intrigued. The pink-haired lady introduces herself as Ruchel, and Blondie finally shares his name, Light. Suddenly, Ban spots Professor Yumina in the crowd. Light asks if Ban had also had a consultation with her. Right at that moment, a light starts to shimmer above their heads. When they look up, they realize the auditorium ceiling is opening. A booming voice fills the space, so loud that it feels like their heads are going to split apart. The intense pressure is overwhelming, making it hard for them to even raise their heads. The ominous voice announces the beginning of the entrance ceremony for the 2557th Union Academy class. When we finally look up at the sky, they see a massive eye towering over them. A little while later, we catch sight of Yumina, who looks delighted after hearing the principal's speech, but our party seems a bit unsure about the whole thing. Then Ban casually drops the bomb, asking if that giant eye was actually the principal. His offhand remark totally shocks everyone, and they quickly bombard him with questions about how he could see that eye at all and how he managed to look up. Curious glances fill the room, especially from Dak Goyun, who keeps staring at him with her deep black eyes. It's literally creeping him out. Ban then stutters and twists his story, saying he just felt like there was a giant eye watching them. Anyway, Yumina explains that the being they saw was indeed the principal, and that they probably won't see him again unless a student achieves something special or causes an incident. She's sure that Ban will get a private meeting with the principal, but Ban quips that meeting a terrifying principal is the last thing he wants to do before he dies. Yumina chuckles and tells them that their achievements are also her achievements as their professor, so she encourages them to work hard. This catches Light off guard, and he quickly asks Professor Yumina if she is going to be in charge of them. Yumina puts her cup of tea down and confirms with a smile, officially introducing herself as Professor Yumina. She teaches magical combat and has been assigned as the homeroom professor for their class 11, hoping to work well together for the next 5 years. Light finds it odd because, as far as he knows, lower-tier special admission students are usually assigned to associate professors. Yumina confirms this, explaining that everyone here is such a special student this time that she has been given their responsibility. She decides to give them a piece of advice, which is to be careful of the regular students' jealousy and hostility. Her words carry weight, and Ban can't help but think that the jealousy and hostility she just mentioned aren't just about academic competition. They also refer to physical confrontations and fights between students. Matters outside the internal competition protected by school rules are things even professors can't interfere with. Yumina then tells them that from now on, the 4 of them should stick together since they're all rare special admission students. They'll also form a party to climb the tower together until graduation. With that, Yumina concludes their session and snaps her fingers to bring out a small gift she has in store for everyone. She promises to explain the rules and details after they receive the artifact. Right at that moment, she produces a pendant, declaring it to be their student ID card. She reminds them that they can use this student ID to identify themselves, access all facilities on campus, and even teleport anywhere within the Union realm. Later, once the trio uses their pendants, they are actually teleported outside of the academy building. But they soon arrive back into the building, which makes them let out a heave of disappointed sighs. I'm not sure why they are disappointed, but I will guess that the pendant forced them to teleport back since they are not allowed to go outside yet. Anyhow, Light adds that they'll need to keep their student IDs on them if they want to enter the tower. But then the cat girl asks why Ban was left behind alone. Light says he has no clue, but the black-eyed girl suggests that maybe the principal sensed Ban's presence too. She suspects that out of all the students, he was the only one who could look directly at him. So there is a possibility that the principal also felt the presence of Ban as well. The scene then flashes to a little while later, where Yumina is on a phone call. She tells the caller that they were just about to have a tea party, but it looks like they'll have to cancel because the principal wants to meet with him. A bit later, we see Ban's terrified and anxious face. He's literally sweating his balls at the thought of having a private meeting with the principal on the first day, even though he hasn't caused any trouble. The principal instructs him to look directly at him because his true form is not here. Ban finds out his principal is talking through a doll. The principal asks him to address him as his master and decides to explain why he called our boy for a meeting. Usually the master tries not to interfere with the students' growth, and if his students are weak, he leaves them as they are. If they are strong, he lets them stay strong. He further says he doesn't care if any of his students die in the tower or end up surviving to one day gain glory. He then reveals that he is only chasing one goal, which is to witness someone who reaches the end of the tower with his own eyes. With a harsh tone, the master makes it clear that everything is meaningless to him other than seeing someone reaching the very top of the tower. The protagonist becomes silent for a second after hearing all of this, and then questions what he means by meaningless. Ban then also recalls his grandpa's words and understands that the tower has existed since the time of his ancestors, and the Ban family is determined to take back the tower as well. The protagonist knows he's ready to achieve all the glory and strength, even if it requires sacrifices like his own life. He remains determined to conquer the tower, but wonders why the professor and other students are chasing after the tower's end. He then asks this mysterious man why he comes all the way from other dimensions to climb the tower and wonders what the tower really is. The master thinks his answer through properly and reveals that the tower is a gateway to the divine. It's a challenge. Ban remains confused, but his master assures him he has no reason to interfere with the student's hard work, but he's thinking about making an exception this time by helping our boy. Of course, Ban doesn't understand what he's saying. The master points the doll's hand towards the protagonist and tells him he has great potential. Seeing his capabilities, the principal decides to make some efforts to help the boy prepare for his journey to climb the tower. Ban questions what kind of preparation he is talking about. The principal shares that the privileges our protagonist holds for exploration have been increased, and now he can travel to any dungeons easily. The master advises him to increase his skills first before starting his journey to climb up the tower. Ban is surprised to find out he can leave the academy, and the master confirms it once again. After the principal is done with this, he helps the boy teleport back, and before letting him leave, the master advises him to improve his skills again and promises to unlock his next privilege soon if he shows great progress. The next privilege he's getting is solo exploration of the tower. The master hopes they can see each other again and teleports Ban somewhere else. Our boy ends up getting transferred to Professor Yumina's room, and she asks him about the meeting. Ban finds his head on her lap and becomes surprised to see her again. He quickly gets up out of embarrassment. Yumina tells him the master's personality is very strange, and he never likes visitors. She notices his pendant and is surprised to find out he's been given permission to leave the academy as a student. Ban has no idea if it's a big deal and remembers the master advising him to improve his abilities quickly. She tells the boy it really is a huge deal and helps him understand that he can now freely explore dungeons beside the tower and also has the freedom to visit external cities at will. She still doesn't believe a student has so much privilege and tells our boy that with this freedom he can gain a lot of experience and prepare more than others. Ban understands her and is relieved the master wasn't advising him to grow stronger because he's totally weak and lacking behind. He smiles awkwardly. Professor Yumina calls him lucky for the privileges he has gained and shares that it's hard for the teachers to leave the academy at this time since it is the Union Academy. Yumina reveals that everything inside the academy favors students only and can be a hassle for the professors. Our boy understands her, and she helps him learn that with the new privileges he has gained, the protagonist can easily explore dungeons and visit new cities whenever he's free. Yumina shows how envious she is and wishes she could also enjoy snacks whenever she wants. The professor recommends Ban to visit an external city known as Ronica and shares there's an amazing spring temple that's worth a visit. Ban is confused by the professor's sudden change in behavior, and before leaving, he asks if she wants something from the city. After a while, the protagonist starts walking towards the new city. He finds the weather amazing and remembers Professor Yumina's request. She informed him about the famous amazing honeymoon wine that's made by the temple priests. She assigns the protagonist a mission to bring back at least 2 bottles of liquor. Ban still can't believe his professor is asking students to run errands for alcohol. Our boy decides to forget about it and thinks he should be grateful he was able to receive an inventory before he left. Suddenly, he notices an item and remembers it's something he received from his grandpa when he was staying at home just before enrolling at the academy. It's a mysterious bag filled with unknown items. Before Ban was leaving his house, his grandpa asked our boy if he was ready to leave. Our boy assured him he's prepared and questioned if grandpa slept well. His granddad ignored the question and suddenly revealed a bag. Grandpa asked Ban to open it and take whatever he wants. Our boy was confused at first, and as he opened the mysterious bag, he found pure gold inside of it. Ban was unsure, but the grandpa confirmed it was okay for him to take as much as he wants. With a smile on his face, Ban's granddad told him all the treasure they have belongs to their ancestors, who spent their lives finding the Tower of Babel. He confirmed once more that Ban could keep all of them and advised the boy to use everything wisely. The protagonist was genuinely grateful to his grandpa and started tearing up out of appreciation. Ban was unsure about how he's supposed to carry so much stuff, annoying his granddad. That was the concern our boy had before. But since now he has authority over an inventory, the protagonist smiles and calls it super useful. He is able to fit all of his items inside the inventory without any hassle, and since he remembers his grandpa teaching him that gold is a valuable item everywhere in the world, our boy decides to take a few pieces of gold. After he is done with preparations, he finally reaches the city of Ronica and becomes excited to set his first foot into the new world. As he finally enters the huge city, our protagonist finds out that despite being in a completely different dimension, the cityscape looks very similar. He realizes his assumption was wrong as soon as he spots multiple flying vehicles everywhere. He questions how that works and suddenly gets called by someone from behind. A few guards approach him as they notice they've never seen him around the city before. As they get closer, the guards realize our boy is a part of Union Academy, which shocks them. They formally greet the protagonist and introduce themselves as the guards that are responsible for the western boundary of the Academy city. Ban introduces himself as well, and they ask how he was able to freely travel to Ronica. They assume our boy received some kind of permission from the Chancellor. He tells them they are correct, and says he has the permission to go exploring freely. The guards show their gratitude for the hard work the Chancellor of the Academy puts in for them to keep the city peaceful. Ban awkwardly laughs and learns his academy is very influential. Since he is a first-year student, the guards assume he doesn't know much about Ronica City and how everything works, so they offer to help him learn more. The guards tell him they will provide him all the guidance since it's a part of their job, and if he is unable to understand something, he is free to ask them. The protagonist decides to take their offer and points towards the hoverbike. Ban tells them he wishes to get one of these bikes and questions how much a hoverbike costs. With the help of the guards in Ronica City, Ban gets his hands on the hoverbike and starts riding it to make his way back toward the academy. The hoverbike makes our boy feel amazing. He soars through the sky and remembers asking the guards to help him buy one earlier. The city guards were a bit confused and informed Ban that even the normal model of a hoverbike costs around 250,000 ronya, which can be very expensive for a student like him. Ban is surprised to find out it's known as a hoverbike and doesn't understand how the currency works in this new world. Our boy decides to exchange a gold bar for it instead, not knowing it's worth a lot. The guards end up getting surprised and question how the protagonist was able to get his hands on such a huge gold bar. Ban reveals his grandpa gave it to him, but they don't believe the gold bar is real. Ban learns that even a single gold bar is worth 7,500,000 ronya, and finds it fortunate that he received something so valuable from his grandpa. He thinks about thanking the old man, and as he makes his way back to the academy, our boy notices his pet snake, Eve. He asks about its opinion and shares that he infused the hoverbike with Yo and Gi attributes, turning it into a living artifact similar to Eve. The protagonist decides to name the hoverbike Lilith and hopes both his living artifacts get along with each other. Eve understands him, and while driving around the Babel Tower, our boy thinks his journey was worth it, as he was able to buy liquor for his professor Yumina and even found a sibling for his pet artifact, Eve. After finishing all his tasks, the protagonist smiles and decides to head back to the academy. After delivering the liquor to the professor, our boy finally joins his friends and starts feeling extremely sick. Acelight gives him a glass of water and expresses his disappointment in Ban. His friend is unable to believe the protagonist ended up coming back hungover after leaving his friends without a word for some random meeting. Ban apologizes and tries to defend himself. He tells them the professor didn't let him leave, and in the end, they both ended up drinking the liquor together. Dogko notices a flower badge on the protagonist's uniform and asks if it's a sign he's going to be representing their group in return for sharing drinks with Professor Yumina. Ban gets confused but thinks Dogko is right. While munching on his food, Aslight realizes they have no choice but to go with the decision since it's from Professor Yumina, who's in charge of them. Dogko shares her opinion and tells everyone she's the only one worthy of representing their group, which shocks both Aslight and Ban. She tells them it's because she's the strongest among all four of them. Dogko asks Ban about his opinion, but Aslight intervenes and makes it clear to her that all four of them are equals. He thinks she's putting it in a strange way and decides to clear her misunderstandings regarding what she just said. Aslight says her attitude and arrogance will be horrible for their future tower climbs and tells her he does not believe she is the strongest in the group. Dogko smiles as she finds it funny hearing equal comrades coming from someone who asked Professor Yumina if it's possible to climb the tower alone. She thinks there's no equality in that either. Acelight becomes embarrassed and tries to make excuses. Ban and Ruchel remember he really did ask such a question of the professor. Aslight awkwardly tells both of them he just asked it out of curiosity and assures them he wants to be in a party with all of them. Ban starts to feel hopeless and sees animosity building up before their morning class begins. He now understands that he should have planned everything out in advance. Ban knows their group is going to experience a tough start. Despite having no particular reason to lead his group and become the president, our boy now understands the reason why his professor chose him out of everyone. It's because Aslight is oblivious most of the time, but has a strong sense of pride. Dogko, despite being incredibly strong, is bound to make a lot of enemies because of her self-centered attitude. Ruchel has a passive attitude, but she lacks the personality to lead the group. Ban sighs as he finds out the real personality of special admission students. Our boy tells the whole group to calm down and hear him out first. Ban thinks that, in his opinion, the leader doesn't need to be the strongest among the four of them and says it's better if they are weaker. Dogko doesn't understand what he's trying to say. Ban helps her understand that if the class president is the strongest person, they are surely going to make decisions on their own, and someone who has the responsibility to unite the class shouldn't do that. His party members hear him out, and the protagonist tells them the leader of their group needs to be someone who is able to offer good solutions for everyone, and it's also important for him to be in the middle of the group. Ban says he has the most easygoing personality, so in his opinion, he is the only one worthy of becoming the class president. Dogko doesn't agree with him, but since Ban has already been chosen by the professor to be the class president, she decides to go along with his reasoning for the time being and lets him off the hook. Our boy thanks her for understanding and feels relieved. Dogko tries to be honest, and with a cold expression, she tells everyone she only wishes to lead the protagonist. Our boy doesn't understand what she's trying to say. Dogko tells them there are a few things she doesn't agree with, but since she wants to get what she desires, she is willing to accept someone as unnecessary as her classmates as well. Acelight and Ruchel are a bit shocked to hear this. Dogko hopes they can see each other again and leaves. Our boy tries to anxiously calm down his roommate and becomes a bit disappointed after experiencing such a morning on his first day of school. Ban becomes tired and questions why a simple school morning feels like he's on a battlefield. The protagonist decides to give himself a break and understands that it will take time for him to resolve the issue of pride among the group members. Ruchel asks Ban about something. She excitedly questions if he still has the cute snake he showed them earlier and tells our boy she wishes to at least touch it once. Ban realizes the academy is filled with multiple challenges, and in his first lesson as the class president representing everyone in a room filled with many unique individuals, Our boy ends up facing a new difficulty as one of the students challenges him in a fight to see if the leftover students are skilled.